All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Peter Zemsky, Strategy Professor and Dean of Innovation at INSEAD. I'm going to let's just say on a personal note, as somebody myself who looks to drive digital innovation and somehow have a positive impact on society, our guest today, Marcelle, is something of a personal role model and inspiration. So Marcelle is the founder of both Local Giving, a fundraising platform for local charities, and her latest venture, Brevio.org, a matchmaking service between charities and funders that's on a mission to try and address over $1 billion that's lost annually in the charity grant giving intricate process. I'll just give you a little bit of background on Marcelle to see where she's coming from. Begins her career with a BSc in Environmental Sciences from University of East Anglia. Does about 10 years of experience with really leading advertising agencies in London and Amsterdam. Picked up an MBA from INSEAD. In fact, she's trying to join her 40th reunion weekend with us here in Fontainebleau this weekend. But again, I think the part we're particularly interested in with Marcelle starts in '96. She co-founds holidayrentals.com. It's the time Europe's leading website for advertising private holiday homes, really ahead of its time, successful exit. And then she pivots to innovation and disruption in the nonprofit sector. We'll be hearing quite a bit about that. Just to say, she's picked up many awards along the years, an OBE from Queen Elizabeth for services to the voluntary sector, Philanthropist of the Year at Spears Wealth Management Award, and did not escape INSEAD's notice. She had one of the first recipients of INSEAD's Alumni Lifetime Achievement Award, Force for Good. So Marcelle, welcome back to INSEAD, at least virtually. What's on your mind today and this week?
Hi, Peter. Good to see you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I did try yesterday, but they wouldn't let me. What's on my mind? When is travel going to be normal again? When is it going to be predictable? I don't know. It's something that I'm finding quite frustrating at the moment. But I am hoping to leave you after this seminar and get on a plane that hopefully will leave and get to my gala dinner tonight before it finishes.
Very good. We're hoping for you. Maybe let's dive in. Maybe I think there's that really critical pivot for you in the middle of your career into the charitable sector. What just motivated you to make that move?
Well, in a way, I think it was really my mother's influence over many years. She's an amazing woman, a Dutch lady who had a terrible time during the war, and then she spent the rest of her life just being nice to people and looking after people. But actually, even before I sort of pivoted, I'd actually done some things, using technology to do good. I'd actually done them already in a few cases. Firstly, I remember, I think it was about 1989, there were floods in Sudan, and I called them to make a donation. There was a sort of, television thing saying, please donate, and I couldn't get through. I thought, well, that's no good. And so as I was working for American Express at the time, and they had this massive, great call center, and I just happened to be seeing the manager that day, I just sort of popped in and said, look, couldn't we help them with this? And 4 days later, 35 of their telephone operators from Amex answered the calls, and they took £54,000 that day. And that sort of made me feel quite good. And it did a lot, actually, because that's apparently still going on. And then I remember when I was doing holiday rentals, there was horrible floods in Boscastle in Cornwall. And basically, there was all these homes were destroyed. So we emailed, I think we had to write to them actually at the time, there wasn't email. We wrote to them and said, could you, if your house is empty, can we give it to somebody? And they did that. And then that also continued. All these things I started, I really pleased about the fact they continued, because I was, I know that when Storm Katrina hit New Orleans, Home Away had bought us, did exactly the same thing because they'd seen what we'd done. And I think another lovely thing I enjoyed was when we sold holiday rentals. A lot of people said, oh, thank you, we've managed to get some money for how. Other guys said, oh, we managed to educate our kids. And another lady said to me, I'm really pleased because I became financially independent, so I could afford to divorce my husband.
Yeah. So it's been I guess, quite a thread in your life, and then there you exited holiday rental though. So you had even, I guess, some more freedom to think about what you wanted to do next.
Well, yeah, exactly. Selling holiday rentals gave me gave me funds to do it properly. I made some mistakes. I won't go into those, but there were some, doing harm sometimes. But it's a bit like doing an MBA. If you want to do well in business, if you want to do philanthropy properly, you've got to educate yourself. And so what I did was I did the philanthropy workshop, and that's a sort of 3 weeks over 9 months, and it was just so inspiring. And it's been, I was very lucky. I was with a group who were really amazing, and we've met 5 times a year since 2008. And what inspired me wherever we went, I was inspired by local charities. And they said to me, look, you know, I was actually the pauper of the group. There were sort of people a lot richer than me on my group, but they said, you've got business experience and internet experience, and the third sector really needs it. So I did my presentation, which I do at the end of it. I said, I'm going to do a platform for local charities. As at that stage, they couldn't raise funds online. They couldn't do gift aid. And so that's what I did. And, you know, we do.
So what was it, just to get the motivation? So we're talking now about localgiving.org. I guess that was just the context. That was during the financial crisis. What was why did you choose to focus there as like the first part?
Well, I think I realized that the third sector is about 10 years behind everyone else or they were, I don't know, catching up in digital use. And these small local charities weren't even allowed on online giving platforms. And they couldn't get gift aid, which is 25% uptake. And I sort of thought, oh my gosh, the financial crisis, the grants are going to start disappearing. These guys are going to be really in trouble. And so we thought we could give them another revenue stream. And that's basically why we did it. Why I did that one, actually, yeah.
And what I find fascinating is you come in with this business background, entrepreneurial background, and as you said, you educate yourself on the sector and really try and understand what's going on. It's one of the things that inspires me in talking to you. So again, at a high level, for those who are not deeply involved, what's still wrong with the charitable giving world today? Are there pain points to be fixed?
Oh, there are certainly pain points. I'm only going to talk about grant making because that's what I know about. There's a lot of other things that I'm not really involved in. I mean, I think you mentioned it before that it's hugely inefficient. Charities spend 1.1 billion pounds per year just in the UK researching and filling in grant applications form, and 66% of them fail. I don't know how much time the grant makers waste. They wouldn't tell us about it. They just said a lot. It costs us a lot. But they all have their own applications forms, their own processes. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But they're all different, and they're actually all asking for the same information. And the thing is that the charity sector is not heavily regulated, and there's no reports to shareholders. You can't tell your ROI to your shareholders. So there's no real driving force for change. They all think they're doing quite nicely, thank you. And nobody's really pushing them. If you think the major changes that have happened in things like telecoms, it's because it was pushed. There's nothing to push the sector. And I think that's the problem.
So I guess getting into how, with some drive, with some push, how could modern digital technologies and other approaches start to address this? And maybe, I guess, then obviously get into what you're actually doing with brevio.org to try and... Well,
the first thing is, of course, with local giving, it sort of enabled the charities to go online and raise money. And that's pretty good. That sort of technology really helped them. But I think the thing I'm focusing on now is making grant making more efficient. We can store granular data of what individual charities do. We can store granular data of what grants are available, and we can match them and then enable one-click applications. The technology is almost embarrassingly simple. I mean, don't tell that to my CTO because it can be complicated. But it is, conceptually and at a high level, it's quite simple. It's just getting the change that is the challenge.
And I just, in terms of context, again, local giving was in the midst of the financial crisis. Actually, Brevio, I guess you were getting it off the ground before the pandemic. How did the pandemic play out for you as you were trying to reorganize this sector?
It wasn't great.
Yeah.
But we'd actually started by thinking, okay, we'll standardize the application forms, because that seemed a classic thing to do. And then we developed a pilot with one of the UK's major grant makers, and it was due to begin in March 2020. Say no more. So that was very frustrating. And I guess, it was frustrating because there was so much we could have done. But everyone was going around like headless chickens. You know, the funders had a lot more money. The charities were really in major problems. But we had really difficult, it was difficult to get engagement. Because
it was already going to be hard to build you already had a big challenge. It's like a common app, right? Get all the all the funders, all the charities on there. And again, to do that in the middle of the pandemic, I guess just got daunting.
They weren't in a place to look up new ideas. They just wanted to do what they'd done. And, hats off to them. They did an amazing job given the tools that they had. So what we did was, it was fun in a way because, we had something to do, and okay, we were all remote. I hired a team remotely, and we just worked bloody hard. But there was nothing else to do. So that was fine.
And then how did the concept evolve then during this period?
Well, what happened? We decided to actually go ahead and launch we weren't going to just stop. So we launched a beta in May 2020. And in fact, I'm glad we did, because we learned a lot from that beta. The first thing we learned was that the charities, it was a much easier sell. You don't have to fill in all these application forms. You can have a one-click application. That was the easy sell. I'm not totally easy, obviously, but it's the more obvious ones. It was more difficult to get the funders on board because they'd invested in their own systems. They had unique questions. They thought, are things too long? All of that. So we suddenly came to the conclusion, we had a sort of eureka moment. We don't want to do an application form. What we're talking is data. We're giving them data. And so what we did is, because we had quite a lot of charities on board and not very many funders, what we did is we scraped the data from the grant makers' websites and we put it onto Brevio. It was all published, so it's all perfectly legitimate. But if we hadn't had any grants on the platform, the charities would have gone away pretty quickly. And so we adapted the funders platform. They would select the questions or any custom ones, and they just take the ones they want, rather than having to fill in all the questions that we had. And they can make a standardized application form. And the other really important thing is that we only give them data of the charities that are eligible for their grants, and we can feed it straight into their systems with an API. So we don't need to tell them to change their systems. The other thing we've done is to change the charity interface so that the first thing they say is, what do you want? What is it you're looking for right now? And that's a sort of an interesting thing. Yeah, we really would like to put a new roof on our building. And they start with that, and then you go into the boring details of their organization. We've since developed a really good product. It's due diligence. Basically, we found that due diligence is a major problem for charities, for grant makers, because nobody wants to be funding things that get them into trouble. So we've developed an absolute gold standard due diligence product, and we're selling that to funders. We've actually got a major client on that, People's Postcode Lottery, and that is a good bridgehead into selling other products for them. The other thing I'm really proud of is we're developing a partnership with Local Giving. The guys who are running that now came to us and say, hey, we think we sort of complement each other. Well, there's a surprise. And so we can actually, between us, that hasn't been announced yet, but it will be pretty soon. And a sort of end-to-end project, that they can do the transactions. We don't do the transactions, but they can, and they do match funds. And then the final thing that was quite
always good, Marcelle, when your kids get along. Yeah, nice. Anyway, I interrupted though.
And the last thing that happened, I went on the Philanthropy workshop. They had a global summit in Toronto in March. And I sort of got an open mic thing. I said, look, guys, we've got this software, we've got this system, and I think you've got the same problem all over the world. So if anyone's interested, come and talk to me. And we're talking to MacArthur, the MacArthur Foundation in the States.
That's a big one.
They actually said to them, we've been working on this for 2 years and you're miles ahead of us.
Just for people maybe who aren't as familiar with the sector, like how what you're trying to organize, like how many charities, how many funders are there out there? What's the kind of numbers
UK,
that
I only know the figures for the UK. In the UK, there's, in terms of registered charities, those are people that are making more than 5,000 a year. There's about 168,000 registered charities with the Charity Commission. In terms of small unregistered groups, that's not because they're no good, it's because they're too small to pay the £5,000 to be registered. And that could be anything between 600,000 and 900,000. We just don't know. We just don't know. In terms of funders, it's a classic, the top 10 do an awful lot of the money. And of course, the government's a major grant maker. And I think it's about 6,000 funders in the UK.
Yeah. Anyway, definitely a case for some sort of technology to potentially make all of those interactions and that matchmaking more effective. And what maybe just probing, since it's an INSEAD call, obviously, you're very much working this out now in the UK. How do you see, and again, but you mentioned that you talk to people in other geographies. I mean, to what extent could you do these kind of platforms cross countries, or is this, quite national, these things, and it would be more learning, but how would you see the international element of this?
Well, what we're doing in the States is that there's somebody who also did the philanthropy workshop, a really great guy called Greg Price, and he's done some volunteering websites. And basically I've said to him, Greg, we're using UK data. The Charity Commission data will not help you in the States. And also the geography that we've got, the geography background won't help you. So what we've said to him is, look, the basic logic is the same. So if you want to take it and add your data in terms of the data for the States, we're very happy to give it to you because, this is a social enterprise. I'm a philanthropist. It's open source, but I'm not going to travel around the world trying to sell it. If somebody wants to come and say, I'm sorry, I'm too old for that now. I did it earlier. I'm not going to do that again. Somebody like this guy in the States is doing it. And he's doing all the communication with MacArthur. The basic open source software is there, but it needs to be adapted to each country, and that'll be the same for every country.
What do you do to fund? So what's the funding model for Brevio? Okay, we're looking at it anyway. Very noble. Okay, so tell us a bit.
I'm funding it. Sorry, let's not be trivial. I'm funding the startup, and I've decided a budget of what I'm going to spend. But basically, we're not charging anyone at the moment because the system, we haven't got enough funders on it yet. But basically, we will be funded by a small fee for the charities, which will be probably £100 a year, because if it's free, they don't value it. And we will also charge the funders depending on how many they have and how big.
To make it sustainable.
So there is a revenue model somewhere, Peter, don't worry.
That's good to hear, Marcelle. Okay, so maybe just give us a snapshot. Again, these are tough sectors like healthcare, like education. Things move slowly. Where are you today in terms of building the activity of Brevio?
Maybe Sandra will give us the slide quickly. Where is it now? Basically, we've got about 3,000. Is it coming?
Sandra, if you want to pull up the slide, there it is. There's your slide.
Right now, we've got about 3,000 nonprofits, where 1,000 have put their live funding needs on, and that's totaling about 300 million of requests. We've scraped about 3,000 grants. Of course, what we want to do with this is go back to these grant makers and say, look, we've got this on the system. We've given you this many leads. How about doing this efficiently with APIs? And also it means that the charities don't have to do different application forms. We've got some grant maker clients, including Postcode Lottery, Lloyds Bank, the Span Trust. We need more of those. If anyone is interested, please come and see us. We've made about 300,000 matches so far. And the accolades we've got is we won the B Corp. We not only got to become a B Corp, but we're best for the world, on the top 5%, which I was pretty pleased with. And the other area which I'm very pleased about is that we are now on the government procurement systems. You've got to do on the procurement. And we've been registered on that, so we can start attacking the local, we can start attacking the government. No, we can start working with the government. You know, we've got a few sales leads. Okay, no more, that's the end slide.
Oh yeah, that's okay. No more slides. Thank you. Actually, so what? Maybe. So no. It's impressive that, you know, again, with the pandemic, with the need to pivot, it's great to see you getting traction. Maybe it will be interesting to hear a little bit about challenges. So both sort of two sides. What are the sort of current challenges you face getting Brevio to take it to the next level? And then after that, maybe we could just reflect across your experiences at these two, Local Giving and Brevio. What does it really take to innovate in this sector? But anyway, but maybe first, just what are the immediate challenges at Brevio?
Well, I mean, I said it already. It's the resistance to change. There's no motivation for change. The charities, the very initial research I did in 2016 was the charities saying, really, we hate this system, but you know, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. So the whole sector is resistant to change, and there's no real emphasis for change. And I think the other thing that does slightly annoy me, and I'm probably going to get shot for this, is that there seem to be armies of advisors. You know, they're reinventing the wheel. I probably shouldn't say this in the Zen people, should I?
No, it's good. No, we
The trouble is that, you know, there's people that keep, you know, we did some research, and we did it in 2018, and I've seen 3 other documents recently doing exactly what we did. They seem to reinvent the wheel. There's no competitive analysis. You know, when you're doing something in the profit world, you look at what's out there and you look what the competition is. It doesn't seem to happen with funders. They just, you know, people earn a lot of money and they want to start a foundation. They don't look out what's already there. And the other thing, quite honestly, not all charities are angels. There is fraud. People who say there was no fraud are kidding themselves. But, you know, as with everything, it's a very, very small minority that they give, you know, that's what makes the news. You know, people like Kids Company, people like the people that, you know, what did I do about it? I think the first thing was really believing in what I was doing, you know, really having that belief and being able to let the team know that I have a belief, and also employing only people who did believe in it. And I think I wasn't in any unique position to do it because I had the resources. I had, you know, I didn't need a career anymore. I was already well into my 60s. And I was, hopefully I had some experience about this stuff, but also I was independent. If I was a charity, funders wouldn't have listened to me. If I was a funder, the charities would say, well, what's she in it for? I found it was quite helpful to be independent. I'm just trying to do this. And I guess the other thing is just not bloody giving up.
I know you. I'm sure we're going to see you at the chateau tonight, one way or the other. But yeah, you're just pretty tenacious, and people know that about you. So yeah, that's nice.
I guess these are different from the non-charitable field. If you're a for-profit, you're judged by the market. You're judged by your bottom line. But charities can be successful if they fill in good grant application forms. If they have a good personality. I mentioned about Kids Company. This was an amazingly charismatic woman who milked huge amounts of money and was just handing out money to kids to buy drugs. Yeah. Awful. And it's actually quite difficult to judge the bottom line in the third sector. Because, you know, everybody talks about, oh, we're going to measure impact. Yeah, well, you can try, but it's not very robust as a system.
Yeah. That's actually, you know, I didn't. Go ahead.
The grant makers aren't judged. They're not judged by how efficiently they work. They're not judged by how much of the charity's time they waste. We actually had one funder who actually said to us, I don't care if I'm wasting the charity's time. This is what I want to do. So that wouldn't happen in the for-profit sector. But, you know, we're getting there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to pick up, I didn't pick up on the stuff that you'd said about the due diligence. Obviously, it's striking to me because you do hear people talking about, oh, we need more metrics, we need to measure impact. So that's, and again, that's an important battle for sure, as you're alluding to. But I've heard less, about this issue of due diligence and is there actual fraud going on? Is that something, again, where, how significant do you think the problem is? And how hard is it? Is this something that people just want to sort of sweep under the table because it just creates complications for them?
No, you've got a very interesting tension within the grant makers. There's the people who want to give the money out and they love the charities and they really want to give it to the charities. And on the other hand, you've got the finance people.
Ah, okay, yes.
And so there's quite a tension between the two. And and they all, it varies between different organizations. But we've got a very comprehensive way of doing the due diligence. And what's really frustrating in a way is that sometimes the charities, they don't get the funding because of some silly things that they haven't done, like they haven't had their account signed. And legally, you can't give the money to them if the accounts aren't signed. And things like there's UK law, if they are earning more than 25,000 a year, they have to submit independently verified accounts. And if they haven't, they're not going to get the grant. So there's a lot of things that we need. We're having a campaign that's just about to start to educate them to sort of just, get these little things right and don't fall over, but don't get the grant because you haven't done those little things.
That's right. It reminds me of some other webinars I've done in very different sectors where people are trying to bring small businesses onto their platform, and you discover there's all this value you can add to these small organizations. That's even in the private sector. I can imagine even more in this sector, right? Where you can, okay, I want to, maybe let's go all the way back for just briefly to holiday rentals, and then we can probe a little bit, even more comparing and contrasting, but just same thing. If we take you back to that moment, what in 96 led you to think about holidayrentals.com, and how did that come about?
It's very simple. My ex-husband, my wonderful husband and I at the time, we just bought a flat in Kinsale in County Cork, looking out over the sea. And we thought, right, we'll have to rent it because they've got a mortgage to pay. And so we advertised in the Sunday Times for 1 week with 3 lines of copy. It cost us about 450 quid. And nothing happened. And so Richard was, he was the technical guy. I mean, he's got his degree is in engineering, and he's very analytical. And when we looked at this internet thing, it was half a tick. We could actually have pictures, and we could be global, and we could have loads of copy, and blah blah blah. And so we decided we advertised our house on place in Kinsale on CompuServe, and the first thing we got was from Ypsilanti, Illinois. Now, I'd heard of Illinois, but I hadn't heard of Ypsilanti. And
there might be something here.
There might be something here. So that's what we did.
And okay, so without going through all that detail, I think it's quite interesting. We have many INSEADers now have built successful businesses. I start to have many conversations about exit, what you do. I think actually one of our alums just we had the biggest female exit in Canada ever. Anyway, but what your own story? 10 years later, you've built this up. What was it? Was it obvious that it was a good time to exit? How did you approach that?
Well, we were approached. We didn't approach it. There was Austin Ventures in Austin, Texas. There was 2 guys that were funded by Austin Ventures who wanted a consolidation play of all the vacation rental sites that they had. Yes, we're going to classic roll up. Yeah, classic consolidation play. And we had been in touch with those people around the year 2000, and we were going to have some sort of collaboration, but they had a lot of, anyway, we walked away from that. But when they were approached by Austin Ventures, they said, well, maybe you should speak to these little guys in Hammersmith in London. And But by that stage, we'd actually, in 2001, we were about to sell, but because things had gone a bit pear-shaped. But, 2001 was not a good year for holidays. And we'd been approached by a German company that was doing the same thing. And so we'd actually it's all Richard. He developed the site to be multi-brand, multilingual, and multicultural. And so we had that system running, and the Americans were told about it. And so they sort of came to us, and we, I'll never forget, actually, we had this amazing meeting, terrifying thing that you're just, Richard and I sitting there and all the venture capitalists and the lawyers and all the rest of it. And we weren't doing very well. And then we had this wonderful advisor who was actually a friend of a very good INSEAD friend of mine, Claire Gazzulli. And he came on the
phone. Yeah.
And he's a guy called Colin Scotland, and he is Scottish. And Colin came out, went boom, 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 finished, all done. It was all done by him. And on the way out, their head lawyer said, gee, I didn't know they had Sean Connery on their side.
There you go. Good using your INSEAD network. By the way, I should say, if anyone wants to put questions for Marcelle in the question thing, I'll work those in a second. But my last question on it, looking back, any regret about the exiting that?
No, none at all, because for two reasons, really. I realized that I'm a machine builder. I have ideas, I build things. I'm not very good at being a machine minder and doing the global growth and all the rest of it. Other people do that better than me, and I just wanted to get onto another one. And I think the important thing is that it gave me the funds to do my philanthropy, and that's been so much more fun than making money. Giving money away is difficult. It's just as difficult, but it's actually more fun than actually.
Certainly, if you want to do it well. I mean, it's easy to give money away, but if you actually want to have the impact, that turns out. Yeah.
Andrew Carnegie said that, didn't he? It's you've got to do it well. Yeah, it's easy to just.
Yeah. No, I need it. Okay, so maybe looking. Actually, I have one question. So Alexandros is talking about a specific thing, but again, we sometimes have students who are interested in learning operations or independent study projects. Do you see like opportunities for like current, say, MBA students if they wanted to, like in this case, like do for charities doing due diligence on certain sectors or certain opportunities? Do you have any thoughts on how, like, business school students doing project work, internships?
Well, we do that.
Again, where they're going to learn stuff and at the same time give back.
We're doing that already. 3 of our board members are professors at University of Bath School of Management. It's sort of closer to me than INSEAD. Peter, easier to get, 20-minute drive. What can I say? And they're great guys. They're world-leading people in operations and entrepreneurship and computer science. So we've got very good contacts with the university. And we've hired one person already, and we've got one person doing a project on fuzzy matching at the university, doing a PhD project, and there's one other as well. And we have it's great to have them at the university. And there's a lot of projects that there's always, as well as I do, you've always got new ideas, haven't you? I remember I have days I say, no ideas today, guys, we've got enough. But it's good to be able to draw on really bright students who see things much more clearly than we do sometimes. And we've learned a lot from them. And we know that they've all gone on to pretty good jobs afterwards.
Very good. So maybe adjacent question. We have a master's of management. So as you may know, we now have this pre-experience master's programs, or people typically in their early 20s. But anyway, someone asking about, quite interested in the sector. Any advice on sort of young talent, how to approach getting into the sector? Like if you wanted to work in parts of philanthropy, any advice?
Finding a local charity. If you're in the UK, go onto local giving and find a local charity and just go along there and volunteer. They all want volunteers. Absolutely. There's a lovely story. I did this Secret Millionaire program a long time ago. And when I gave this lady who had this lunch club, I gave her a check for £20,000. And she said, so you're not going to come and volunteer with me? She wasn't interested. So they're all desperate for volunteers. So that's the first thing you do volunteering and then find out about it. And You know, there's special magazines that do recruitment there. But if you've done some volunteering and you can really do, I mean, when we're hiring people, I want to find out what they've done in the sector on the rock face, because you learn so much there. So that's the first thing.
Yeah. Interesting. And do you think, again, I not myself thought about this, but when people are thinking about it, how would you think about being on the charity side versus the funder side? I mean, they're both important. What are you more on the rock face to begin with?
I think you should do both at some point in your career. I really think you should do both, because I found people who work in charities understand how the grant makers work, and people who work in, you know, if they've worked on both sides, they understand the other side more easily. So I would do both. I would really try, obviously not simultaneously, but, you know, do one and go on to the other one.
Very nice. Okay, so let's start wrapping up with some bigger thoughts. You know, you've 40th, this is your 40th MBA reunion. So maybe just reflecting back in terms of
40th.
Yeah.
40th, not 30th. Thanks for the 40. Compliment.
I don't. And so anyway, what do you see? You know, when you think, and you know, you were there for the early internet. What do you see that's sort of similar? I mean, you know, the tech sector has exploded and become such a thing. But what do you see as similarities, differences in the whole entrepreneurial space?
It's so different. It was really hard for me to sort of pick out some things, but I was looking through my files the other day and I happened to come across these forms. Oh. So maybe you could share the 3 forms there.
Oh, yeah,
and this is what we did in 1996. This was the application form that we sent out. We called people and we said, have you heard of the internet? You're advertising in the back of Sunday Times. Can we send you a form? Could you fill it in and could you send it back to us? And so that was the form. That was the form. It was called.
There was no app for that at the time. Okay, yeah.
And then it got sent back to us, and then Muggins here keyed it into Cold Fusion by hand.
Yeah.
Along with it, can we have the next slide, please, Sandra? The next slide was questions about the internet. What is the internet? The internet is a worldwide network of tens of thousands of computers. I mean, yeah, we've come a long way. This is really It's, you know, what is the World Wide Web, and all the rest of it. And then the last one, because people couldn't actually mostly go onto the internet to see what it would look like. We have the next one, please, Sandra. This was the example, and this is the house in P and Sale that we had. And so we literally set this to show this is.
You had to print out the internet listing and send it to them. Yes. Yes. So, I think it's funny that you're
Yeah, I just saw those. I just had to share them with you. But in a way, that's fine. Thank you, Sandra. The systems were much less complex. So there weren't so many browsers and formats and all the rest of it. And so we could actually launch new products very fast. One Sunday afternoon, I was lying in the sort of early summer, I was lying on the sofa thinking, there's a lot of people who've still got availability. So we thought we could do an online availability. And so I sent out these letters to people saying, have you got which days are free? And 4 days later, we launched a late availability index, which I hand coded into the site. The other thing is we had a great CTO, and he said, I can get the text from when my train is going to be late. So what we did is we had the system that we could actually send people a text if they had a booking inquiry. Now that sounds strange now, but if they were living in a village in France, they had to drive to a town to go to an internet cafe to get their inquiries. So by 2000, we made some changes. We did it. We had an online entry form system, which was pretty cool. It was very cool at the time. And I think the other thing, you know, we were very lucky in a way because we were probably the oldest internet entrepreneurs. We did have some savings, and we had a mortgage which kept going up. The property went up, but it basically meant that when we sold, we didn't have any other shareholders. We
I mean, you were able to ride out the internet bust, right? In 01, a lot of maybe younger people were taken out.
I think in a way, in terms of what makes us different from the younger generation. I mean, we were more risk averse and less confident. There is no way. I mean, we launched holiday rentals when I was 45. There's no way I would have done that when I was 25. You just wouldn't, you sort of think about the security and the rest of it. And I think the other thing is that things moved more slowly then. There wasn't social media, so you didn't know so much about who else was doing it. And now I feel that people are getting all this social media saying, God, if I don't do it now, 150 other people are doing it, and I better get moving. And I think that makes it, that's a difference that we didn't have.
Yeah, I know that speed is, and just the networking of it all. I have a couple of short questions coming in that I do want to throw your way. So people thanking you for your sort of visionary sharing. What do you thought? Obviously there's a lot of issues around climate change today. You had early studies, I guess, in environmental sciences. Is that an issue of direct interest to you these days, or it's sort of peripheral?
I feel very guilty that when I graduated in 1971, we knew about the problems with the environment. We read Silent Spring, Rachel Carson, and I feel really guilty that my generation knew about it and we didn't do enough about it. And in fact, the School of Environmental Sciences has done some amazing stuff on climate change. I feel guilty I haven't done too much. That said, we do have climate change. We do have climate charities on the site. And we do some promotions about it, but I have to say it's not something that's my key focus at the moment.
Sure, you can only do so much. Here's one. I think there's someone from sort of this, asking about charity in the Islamic world, which they find very traditional, right? You can in many parts of the world, things are not nearly maybe as even advanced as in the UK. Do you have connections into besides the US? Have you had interests around what you're doing in other parts of the world, Islamic or emerging markets?
No, we haven't. No, none at all. No, I guess.
So there you go. It's an opportunity if anyone actually. Yeah, it's an open source code.
Yeah. No, we because of that, because we did that beta and things did slow down during COVID. I think it's only now that we're going to start shouting about it, and then when people approach us, we'll be very happy to share things. But we've been quite quiet until we've done those changes, which are just, in fact, if I listen to my tech team, we're going to get them all completely finalized by the end of next month, and then I'll start shouting about it.
No, I know I should have maybe positioned that this was still relatively early days for Brevio. So yeah. Okay. So maybe your last couple questions. You get lots of recognitions now. You've been, slogging away, having an impact. How is that? What does success mean for you? What motivates you?
The accolades were great. Of course, they were nice. But it wasn't what motivated me. I didn't do it to get an OBE. I just wanted to, or all the other accolades. I actually got a bit embarrassed after a while. I thought it was getting a bit embarrassing. But I just wanted to make things better. I just saw this great big problem, and these poor people in the charity world just filling in all the same old application forms, and nobody joins us. Nobody goes to work for a charity or volunteer for a charity because they want to fill in an application form. So I just wanted to make things better. And of course, the other thing, the OBE does help open doors for me, and there is no doubt about that, especially in the third sector. If I sign a letter with OBE, people will actually probably give me and Brevio. It gives Brevio, it gave local giving credibility, it gives Brevio local giving. And I have to say, it was a huge honor to meet the Queen. It's, since all the things have been happening recently, I'll never forget. And she was just absolutely charming. And she remembered some people in Ireland. It was the year she'd been to Ireland. I will never forget that moment. I will never, ever forget that moment. She was such an amazing woman. That's very much in our mind these days.
Yeah, I know. So maybe, just maybe last thoughts. Coming back to the leadership. So we focused on you a lot as an entrepreneur and your vision for how to change and improve these sectors. What kind of leader are you? What have you learned about for yourself being an effective leader of entrepreneurial ventures?
I think there's three things I'd pull out. I've thought about this since you mentioned it, Peter. The first thing, I think, is a balance. I like to consult with people. I like to, what do you think about this? You're the expert in tech, you're the expert on it, you're on the front line talking to the customers, you're developing the product, you're selling to the product. Be consultative. And but on the other hand, be decisive. So, okay, thanks for all your input, everybody. Really appreciate it. I can't do what all of you want, but this is what we're going to do, okay? And that I think is quite important, to consult and then just be decisive, make those decisions quickly, don't keep people hanging on. I think the other really important thing is to stick to your values. And we only recruit people who share those values, and nobody gets recruited into Brevio or local giving until I've met them. And we've actually developed 5 values at Brevio, and we've gone through, we spent quite a lot of time articulating them as a team, and I'm proud of them, and we live by them. And there's 5 of them. First is we're there to create positive change. That's what we're doing here. The other thing I think is important is to be open and honest and direct. Don't beat around the bush, be transparent. Just say what you've got to say. That's probably the Dutch side of me coming out. The other interesting thing is to balance soul and science. We are working with science, but we have soul as well. We care about these charities. And I think the fourth one is lifting each other up. Don't put people down. Try to help to lift people up. And during remote working and lockdown and things like that, that was particularly important. To be able to identify somebody's having a tough time here, and you notice on a Zoom call that I was generally looking at people. Are they okay? And do they need? Are you okay? And people it was a tough time. And I think the last thing is to use our time and our resources smartly. Please don't waste time. Please don't waste resources. And then the last one is to be humble and to admit your mistakes. I made some mistakes. And I think politicians should learn those. Just admit it, say you're sorry, and get on with it and change things. So I guess that's where I'd put it, if that helps.
Yeah, very, 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 as usual, clear and well thought through. Again, I really just thank you for taking time. We're going to wrap up shortly and let you hopefully get to your flight and get on the road. Maybe one last, why don't we throw that last slide up there for those who might be involved in the sector. Where's this?
Yeah, this is what that previous question was asking. I mean, how can Brevio help you want to get involved in the third sector? If you're volunteering or working for a non-profit, just get in touch with us and we can help you find you a simpler way to apply for grants. And what I find quite interesting is a lot of people are on both sides of what you're talking about. Where do you go first? There are a lot of people, especially us older ones, who might be working for a charity, but might actually be a philanthropist, might be giving money away, might be part of a family foundation. And Brevio can be your key to better and safer grant giving. So either side of this marketplace that you're working in, we can get in touch with you, get in touch with us, and we've got a great team, and we'll be able to help you.
Thank you, Marcelle. Thank you for sharing. Always fascinating the challenges you tackle, how you tackle them, but also just, I think, really inspirational for everyone, how you're taking the talents that you have and really finding how you can have the most impact on the world. So thank you for taking time to share with the INSEAD community.
Thank you very much, Peter. I look forward to seeing you tonight, I hope.
I hope so. Take care. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in with us. Over and out from Fontainebleau and Bath.